I have started a journey of learning and growing things that can help me be a better concept designer. I'm already into drawing different species. I believe these studies are going to help me in creating better creature designs and also environment designs. But as I continue those studies, I also want to look at culture, not just biology, because I also want to fill a world with interesting characters. For character design, hairstyles and costume are key elements in creating unique personalities. So I decided to look at history of clothing for understanding how technology and culture impacted what people wore. This will help for any world building project because let's say we have a medieval fantasy world or a world close to Elizabethan era. Knowing a little bit of period costumes will be useful, or someone is creating an Edwardian steampunk or Victorian steampunk world, then surely they will look into Edwardian and Victorian fashion history for references. I'm not saying that in a world building project, people have to be historically accurate. Surely, in a medieval fantasy world, magic can be also a part of fabric creation. So we are not just limited to medieval textiles and sewing technology. But by studying fashion and history of clothing, my visual library will enrich and help me come up with better design solutions. So that is why I am starting the series of learning about history of fashion and textiles. Before I start, I have to admit I have a little bit of background in fashion design, especially the history of 19th and 20th centuries are subjects I am quite familiar with since I drew many fashion illustrations related to those periods. But for this project, I'm starting from scratch, starting a research from prehistoric clothing and creating new drawings for my studies. But I will keep my research simple because, as I said, my aim is to get better in character design and world building. So I will not go very deep like I'm writing my master thesis on the history of clothing. To understand how clothing can be important in creating cultures and characters, first we need to understand how it originated and why we are wearing clothes the way we do today. I will leave the origins and early history of clothing to my second video in the series, and in this one, I will be focusing on the functions of clothing. The fundamental importance of clothing in daily life is that it's a necessity. Because clothing serves a variety of functions, offering protection from the elements, rough surfaces, sharp objects, irritating plants, and insects' bites. By creating a barrier between the skin and the environment, it helps insulate against cold or heat, provides a hygienic shield against infectious or toxic substances, and protects feet from injury and discomfort while aiding in navigation through different terrains. Clothing primarily serves to protect the wearer from environmental elements such as cold, wind, and sun. In colder climates, clothing provides thermal insulation, while in warmer regions, lighter materials are preferred. Specialized garments like raincoats, boots, and hats offer protection against rain and snow. Clothing is made from various materials, including leather, fur, woven fabrics, and synthetic fibers. While accessories like handbags and jewelry are not considered clothing, they're still a part of fashion, and items with protective functions such as eyeglasses and sunglasses are still considered clothing. Clothing shields the body from weather, sun exposure, and other hazards, with certain garments offering protection against specific dangers like chemicals, insects, or abrasions. Clothing also guards against ultraviolet radiation and can enhance vision in harsh conditions, such as with brimmed hats. Additionally, specialized clothing protects against injuries in certain occupations, sports, and warfare. Garments with pockets, belts, or loops can also carry items, freeing the hands for other tasks. Clothing plays a crucial role in providing comfort, meeting various physiological, social, and psychological needs. Much like food, it offers comfort through aesthetic appeal, tactile sensation, thermal regulation, moisture management, and pressure relief. So, if you wear clothes that are accepted by the society, you don't think about it, but you have Psychological and social comfort, a sense of belonging and identity are important functions of fashion. Smoothness, roughness, softness, and stiffness of certain fabrics can give us tactile comfort, and the fit of the clothing can help us get pressure comfort. Sometimes we need fitted clothing like for sports, or sometimes we need loose clothing like when we are sleeping, though everyone can have their own preferences. Fabrics we wear should be comfortable for maintaining a balance of moisture and heat between the body and the environment. So the lightness of the fabric is not the only factor. The materials used in creating the fabric are influencing the moisture or heat that the fabric can hold, and skin can feel unpleasant when there is wetness or extra heat. Beyond its practical uses, clothing holds significant social meaning. It has social and cultural functions. Wearing clothes is a social norm that varies across cultures, often associated with modesty. Being unclothed in the presence of others can be a source of embarrassment. In many cultures, public exposure of the genitals, breasts, or buttocks is considered indecent. The covering of the pubic area or genitals is a common minimum standard across different cultures, suggesting that social convention underlies these customs. Clothing can also serve as a way to communicate social status, wealth, group identity, and personal expression. It can indicate occupation, gender differentiation, and social status, playing a significant role in cultural identity and personal style. For gender differentiation, for example, in most cultures, clothing styles, colors, and fabrics are traditionally gender specific. For example, skirts and dresses are often seen as women's attire, while neckties are associated with men. Though trousers were once exclusive to men, they're now common for all genders. While women might wear clothing seen as masculine, the reverse is less common. Though men in some cultures still wear garments like kilts or togas on special occasions. Some cultures, like those with Islamic traditions, enforce specific dress codes for women, often requiring them to cover more of their bodies than men. And for examples of social status, historically, clothing has been used to signal social rank. In ancient societies, certain colors or materials were reserved for the elite, like Tyrian purple in Rome or yellow in imperial China. In modern times, social status is often indicated through luxury or designer clothing, with fashion choices reflecting wealth and cultural capital. And religion also has its own part in clothing. Religious attire often distinguishes clergy or marks special religious status. For instance, Buddhist monks wear special robes and Catholic priests have specific vestments. Some religious dress codes hold deep spiritual significance and reflect broader religious teachings. And when we talk about clothing, we also need to talk about fashion. These two are sometimes inseparable. Fashion encompasses the creation and combination of clothing, footwear, accessories, cosmetics, and jewelry, blending various cultural aesthetics to form distinctive styles and trends. These styles serve as expressions of social status, self-identity, and group affiliation. The term fashion is multifaceted, referring not only to the industry, but also to ever-changing styles, aesthetics, and trends that define it. By wearing outfits that incorporate specific cultural patterns, motifs, shapes, and cuts, individuals can express their values, beliefs, and ways of life. Fashion reflects changes in clothing, seasonal trends, and cultural influences. So societies or characters can be anti-fashion, and it focuses on preserving tradition and maintaining the status quo. While fashion is driven by the desire for social mobility and change, in anti-fashion, time is viewed as continuous with consistent and unchanging modes of adornment. In contrast, fashion embraces change with evolving styles and trends. From this perspective, fashion's evolution is a deliberate process orchestrated by influential figures within the industry who promote new styles through channels like advertising to drive change in our modern world. So for world building, there are many things we have to consider while we create clothing for our cultures. Clothing serves as a powerful cultural marker reflecting social status, gender, and identity across societies. But since clothing is essential for protection from the environment, while establishing dress codes, these factors must be carefully considered. Obviously, geography is going to have an impact. People living on hills or mountains should have different garments than people living on flatlands near the sea. And climate is going to determine the lightness of fabrics, colors used in those fabrics. So I would start from there. I would first look at where a group of people are living, what are their environmental conditions are, and then what are their surroundings like, not just landforms, but also plants and animals, because people will need raw materials to turn it into fabric. Animal skins, leather, fur, silk, and plant-based things like cotton or flax can be the raw materials, or we can always create something different but similar to those. Maybe there is a magical creature and its webs can be used to create a different form of silk, and maybe the texture, the feel, or the durability differs from the silk that we know in our world. Or maybe there is a different creature which has a unique leather or fur. And if this world is not modern or sci-fi, we have to take into consideration the technology that needs to be used in order to turn raw materials into fabric, because in ancient times, these were not easy. There was no textile industry of today. Maybe there is a need for a special craftsman for weaving fabrics and also sewing garments. Art styles, motifs, patterns are another dimension to creating fabrics we should also consider. And then we find ourselves with lots of questions about this culture, because to create these kinds of things, we should understand their culture and iconography and also the symbols they use. And we should also think about the trade possibilities about textiles. If a certain fur can be gathered from an animal in a certain part of the world, it can be a valuable asset for those people living there. There can be conflicts between people on the rights to use raw materials, or it may be other than economical reasons. There may be ecological conflicts, like some people come and kill animals for their fur, and the indigenous people of the area are trying to protect them. Or it can be something of a religious value to those people, and they may not want to give away the things that are sacred to them. Just thinking about clothing and its materials create a lot of things to discuss in world building. For example, we can think about countries having clothing laws, or religions like in our world. Many of them have some limitations on clothing. Is it also important for the religions that you created for your world? Or are there dress codes for different occasions or organizations? Speaking of organizations, maybe there will be a need for designing uniforms or workwear. There can also be different types of costume people wear, which may refer to the unique style of clothing worn by certain individuals or groups, reflecting their class, gender, occupation, ethnicity, nationality, activity, or time period. In essence, again, their culture. There can be costumes for special occasions, holidays, festivals, or rituals that we may want to design according to our world building. There can be various types of clothing. We just named a few: workwear, uniforms, religious clothing, but we can come up with new things. And the different clothing types should also be considered. Let's say we created a culture and people will be wearing daily garments, shoes, outerwear, adornments, jewelry, bags, headdresses, hats, and we need to decide each of them. So this idea of creating distinct clothing for my world building project opened up a lot of more questions, and I learned that I need to think about various subjects starting from geography, climate, economics, raw materials, cultures, gender, politics, and so on. And I have a lot to learn about before jumping into any project. So I will be working on this series about clothing and its history. So if you want to learn with me, I will be here sharing what I came across. So see you in a different study session.